Hello, Exiles. It's 3:40 in the morning, and once again, I can't sleep. Practically a meme at this point that the Kitava build guide keeps doing this in the middle of the night. I don't know why, but the good news is it means I can get this video out, and this video is here to give you a smattering of updates about how to progress the build past its initial stages, kind of build guide part 2, if you will. Now that we've got an idea of what the league mechanic is like, it's much easier to understand what we're going to need going forward. In addition, a lot of things have actually changed. We have our Arcanist brand tech kind of letting us parasitize how Desecrate works for single target situations. And I have a few other things to bring up as well. Also, the little revelation of 5% increased CDR, making our top end RNG much more consistent. That was kind of a weird one, but it's there. All the same, when you reach this point, I have my 6th link. I don't have level 4 Enhance and Empower yet, but honestly, that seems to be a little less important because with the brand tech, our single target, when we need to do big single target, is much better already than it was last league. And last league, we had access to other corpse scaling modifiers and a stronger base on earth quality. It's actually quite amazing that the build has turned out this much better. Honestly, the build probably should have been way better last league when I even recommended it, but you know, it's a process. It takes time, and I honestly needed both some help from the community and time to think about it myself, and help from the community is where we're starting today, because once again, Tialgo Alfonso has come into my stream with some incredible offerings. This one, I have to admit, I was kind of shocked when he brought it up, and I was like, how did I not see that? How did I not see this rather obvious option? And then I looked in my notes from 2 leagues ago, and actually I had looked at this, but I didn't care for it at the time, because before the Desecrate tech, gem levels for Unearth was like everything. So making an incredibly expensive decision that would potentially lock out the ability to get a +2 amulet didn't seem like the best choice. Now it's a great choice. In fact, you can still get a +1 amulet like this, and it will still be a rare. And that's a big deal because a rare amulet obviously has stats. What I'm talking about, and I'm going to build this right here as we're talking. So we go here, go Jade Amulet, or a Strength base, whichever. Going to be one of the two probably. And we go to Add Modifier, Essence. And you can see here, on the Essence of Insanity, 10% chance to recover 10% of mana when you use a skill. This is the mana mastery, but like, again, it doubles the effect of it. It's a huge deal. In fact, Tialgo was telling me that he completely skipped Nexus gloves in favor of this, and I would not outright recommend that, but this is an important opportunity because there is another item in the game that's very important when you factor this in that kind of makes this amulet your top end option. Called Watcher's Eye. Watcher's Eye has a mod on it that is insanely good. It's called Recover Mana on Skill Use. It goes up to 15%, which means that we can potentially reach 35% chance to recover mana on skill use. That's incredible. It's a lot more potent than the Nexus Gloves mod. It also removes the 30% reduced maximum mana implicit, which was good for maintaining the cost of the skill earlier on, but at this point in the game, you should be using an inspiration to kind of leverage it, and honestly, we kind of get that benefit from the tree baseline now because Dreamer was changed not to increase our maximum mana. There's also the reduced mana cost mana mastery. All of this comes together to say that we can actually push our mana value much higher with this because keeping the cost low is not that hard. And that means a more effective mind over matter shield as well. It's a lot. The reason I haven't done this yet personally, and why I'm sticking with the Nexus Gloves, is because, first of all, Nexus Gloves plus Mastery it's enough to be comfortable while playing the game. I've beat the Pinnacle bosses, I'm killing Conquerors and stuff left and right. I did terrible things to Drox on stream today that I honestly was not expecting. They must have nerfed him or something. Either that or the build's doing a lot more DPS than I thought. Either way, it was a very impressive showing by the build's single target capabilities. More importantly though, the reason I haven't done this yet is because I want to get another good mod on my Watcher's Eye. And then on top of that, I want my amulet to be very impactful. And that means probably hunting for a +1 physical skill gem fracture mod so that I can hit it with the essence and guarantee that 2 mods together Hopefully with life, ultimately. If I could get like tier 1 life on it, I'd probably go into meta crafting even and try to hunt for really, really high quality suffixes. That would just be the amulet. So that's kind of a long-term thing, but the reason I'm bringing it up first is because if you have not invested in Nexus gloves yet, which you just should because they're very cheap now. But if you have not invested in Nexus gloves and you're in a league start situation, you might find an Essence of Insanity first. That's important because an Essence of Insanity can replace this more or less. That's kind of enough. I don't think it's probably quite as good, but it's pretty good. Let's not beat around the bush here. Of course, there are alternative amulet options. There's Replica Dragonfang's Flight if you want to go all in on Unearth. That will probably give you the smoothest mapping experience from just a DPS perspective because that's going to give you the strongest on-the-go damage. There's never going to be any brands put down. You're just going to have that really big max life on Unearth. Alternatively, a +2 amulet is also very good if you're sticking with the Nexus gloves. Part of the reason why I like this Essence amulet strat, though, is the Nexus gloves can go away now. That's a big deal because we're already kind of doing weird things to get an armor roll on these gloves. When you take the armor roll necessity into play, you realize that Crusader gloves would be a lot better. Also, that's 2 Eldritch Implicits we get to make use of because we don't have an implicit that we're fighting around anymore. So long term, that amulet is almost certainly going to be the way to go. I think just because the opportunities in the gloves are pretty tremendous. Tialgo's playing the game very differently than I am. I believe they're using a Replica Callista's Grace to give them area of effect and then kind of cutting some nodes on the tree so they can run up and get a cluster jewel. And they get Sadism, which is a really powerful node because of the way we're always igniting, chilling, shocking, etc. And some other goodies from up over there. And that's, I mean, honestly, that's a really smart way to play the game. I'm not a cluster jewel guy. I also don't think the way I'm doing it is wrong. And I honestly personally would want to get different things with the gloves, but that's kind of the great part about this build is there's a lot of rooms to go in different directions and for other people to play it. Even at the top end. I thought at the top end, things would be getting narrower, but it's actually opening up. There's 100 different ways to go about it. Speaking of more ways to go about it, body armor and you. This league, anyone who's looked at my POV has probably noticed, I don't have triple armor energy shield prefixes. I actually have a Gravicius mod, and I went with this because I found this chest armor and I was like, all right, that's really good. I can do the Gravicius mod. I'd already known about that. With the way the mastery works for giving us that bonus armor and ES, I thought I would really want to make sure I got the triple T one, but honestly, the Gravicius mod kind of matches. And I would go so far as to say, if I could get a T1, what is that, armor and energy shield %, and then flat armor and energy shield, this would actually be the best. I think this would actually beat out the other triple T1 one, just because converting your physical damage to elemental is so strong in the sense that reduced armor mods can't affect this sort of mitigation. This is a 5/5, it can be 6/6. That's effectively, what is it, 75% cut off from the 12%, so... And in a perfect world, this chest has another suffix on it that reads 8% reduced physical damage taken, and then it's really, really good. You're gonna feel a lot tankier with that, and it's gonna push kind of the battle of the build, which is getting that Fizz max hit up even higher. As for how the body armor is supposed to look, one of the big reasons we like a rare is because Determination Aura Effect is very nice, and Increased Effective Offerings is huge. I only have the low one here. I wish I had a higher one, because block is good, and that's what this is. This is block a chance. And in fact, on our boots, we have Bone Offering Increased Effect, which that's another one I want to get a little higher. So, kind of important, especially this league. We had Offering Effect sources in the Wildwood Ascendancy last league, so block is a little bit harder to get capped. And while we're talking about that, we kind of have to go to the shield base. My block is not capped yet, and a big reason for this is because I'm using an Archon Kite shield. That's what I could get, right? This is kind of vestigial from early on. It's not a great shield, but it has the most important stats, in my opinion. It's got the reduced extra damage taken from critical strikes, the spell block roll, and a decent life roll, and that's kind of what I'm there for, as well as okay armor and energy shield. The problem is 22% chance to block is actually 5% less than the champion Kite shield. And the reason it's 5 instead of 4 is because of this mastery here. And 5 would put me very close to cap on both ends. And additionally, this is not the best spell block. I could have a higher offering effect on my body armor through a better Eldritch Implicit, as well as higher bone offering effect on my boots. So there's a lot of ways to get those last few points, but they are a little bit of a struggle compared to last league. That said, 70-70 block is still really good. So, we've talked about Watcher's Eye and the Clarity mod, kind of when we were going over why the Amulet option with the Essence is so good. And the big thing about Watcher's Eye is it can have up to 3 mods, and ideally, you kind of want to get at least 2. Me personally, I really want the reduced extra damage from crits mod, because that with the shield can get to 100, and then I can change my anoint, which would be great. Also, don't sleep on this anoint. Taking reduced extra damage from critical strikes is very important. Doesn't sound like it is, but when you have enough of this stat, those sudden mysterious deaths go away while you're mapping. That's the whole reason for it. Also, it makes the build tankier against pinnacle bosses than you would expect, because a lot of attacks that you probably could survive will suddenly one-shot you out of nowhere because of a crit, even though they would normally just be scary. And this just removes that. You know, it's one of the, I think, the most slept on defensive layers in the game, which I hope it's not anymore, because we all lived through Affliction when crit scaling was such a danger. At least anyone playing the game from back then is. You might be new to the league today, in which case, holy hell, picking this build as your first one. Now, we do have to get into what mods are good on the Watcher's Eye. Obviously, I've given one of my top picks. You additionally have the flat armor from Determination, which is really good, but also probably the weakest option. The flat fizz damage reduction from Determination, I think it's 8% potentially. That's like 2 endurance charges all the time, permanently. And it also, if you have endurance charges, it doesn't count against your total. It's just, that one's really fantastic as well. If you can get the gem space opened up, which by all my estimations, everyone should be able to do this. You might be running something that challenges it, but if you can get an extra slot open, you can run Vitality as well. And at this point, you're hearing Vitality, wait, I still don't understand how we're running Clarity. I've talked about this in the build guide, I'm gonna say it again. Eternal Blessing is awesome, because it specifically states that you can only reserve 1 aura with mana. If you hook up Arrogance to other support gems, like level 1 Clarity or level 1 Vitality, which reserve a very small amount, it's just gonna knock out a tiny bit of your hit points. And what that does is, it lets you run these Watcher's Eyes. Why is this a big deal? Well, you can get Universal Leech from a Vitality mod. You can also get life gain per enemy hit from a Vitality mod. And both of these are a layer of defense that we really don't have utilization of quite yet in the build. So that's a big bonus. Survivability in another way. I think I'd be more excited about the gain per enemy hit, just because we hit a lot, you know? We hit a lot. Moving on to rings, and speaking of life gain on hit, the Crusader and Shaper ring bases actually have life gain on hit as a prefix, and that's really cool, because life gain on hit as a prefix, again, is going to be a huge life recovery option, where kind of like we're in a desperate sustain scenario. Maybe if you're doing more aspirational content, I would say like Deliriums or Simulacrums possibly, where you have to sit there and deal damage and you feel like you can't otherwise. This gives you a more immediate, like, guaranteed boost of health when you need it most, which is when there's tons of enemies around. And that's really powerful. That shouldn't be slept on. It's a really good series of mods. I think Tialgo, because I mean, I have to bring him up at this point. He's kind of the, he's the all-star out of the community who's risen up to really make me doubt my own ability, actually. It's bad, man. Not really, no. I'm not that low confidence, but I'm actually like shocked with how much this guy's come up with so quickly. He's clearly played the game for a long time and knows a lot of tech. But I'm rambling. I shouldn't be rambling. This is going to be a long video regardless. The other thing about rings, this is kind of the recoup rule. 40% of damage is taken from mana before life. This is an important detail because it means that 60% of damage is going to our life as long as we have mana. Additionally, we have 50% recoup from the tree. You can get 10% more recoup on your rings, which kind of accounts for all of your life over 3 seconds if you have the mastery. That's a very strong defensive layer. It's made a little bit stronger by that one suffix if you can fit it. So I tend to recommend that. Additionally, rings have a craftable betrayal prefix that will give you increased mana, like flat mana, and then also damage recouped as mana, which we have mana recouped as, or which we have damage recouped as mana from a mastery. So we can basically pump that up, and it's just some more resilience to ensure that we have mana in kind of a sustained incoming damage scenario, which is more survivability, which you can see where my priorities lie. Hopping over to our main links, this next one is a little bit important, especially after everything else that I've said, and that's fire penetration. I still have just kind of a regular fire penetration, but awakened fire penetration exists. Awakened fire penetration is a really useful gem because at level 5, or if you have a +2 fire gems corrupted Kitava's Thirst helmet like me, at level 3, you get the effect supported skills have 10% chance to inflict fire exposure on hit. And what that does, and this is why it's kind of important, is it knocks out the need to have Wave of Conviction in your trigger weapon. At that point, you could move, say, Shield Charge in here, since it's not a spell, and free up gem slots elsewhere on your equipment. Probably the only major change to make from here. Otherwise, you could swap Cruelty for Hypothermia. That's also a very good choice. It's technically higher damage, as long as there's a corpse nearby, and there should always be a corpse nearby. And I'm just gonna say I'm a little paranoid about it. I've had weird experiences where it felt like the damage wasn't there, and I don't know why. But that was in the past. I think since the Desecrate tech, that damage will always be there when you absolutely need it, and I have no idea why Hypothermia would not work, period, in the first place. It's probably in my head, placebo effect. And the last topic of discussion in this machine gun rapid fire list of updates to the build that you might choose to employ, we have Call to Arms. And I'm gonna be honest with you first, I hate this support. I hate it a lot. I'm very disappointed with this because we lost the Keystone. And this is not a one-to-one replacement for the Keystone. This is your supported Warcry will trigger its cooldown over and over again automatically, which is good. And if you were left clicking the Warcry before with Call to Arms the Keystone, it's not very different. Although it has reduced cooldown recovery rate, which is very strange to me that they're like making us require a gem slot and then also doing that. I think they hate melee. Probably. All the same, what if you weren't left clicking it? I'm a big fan of not automating certain things like that. I want to have, say, Molten Shell as a button I consciously press. That's part of the reason why I can get really risky with my gameplay and not worry about it too much, because I always have the Molten Shell when I need it. You can't do that with your Enduring Cry. You can't do that with the other option either. Now, of course, Enduring Cry is the obvious option. It gives you endurance charges, more survivability, but let's be honest, the build kind of has enough survivability. Granted, endurance charges would be a huge bonus to our effective HP, and it would be a huge bonus to our Fizzmax hit, because you'd have 3 of them, and against a boss, you'd pretty much have them up all the time. This is not the best choice, though, because Infernal Cry exists, and this is tech more or less pilfered from the Righteous Fire community. Kind of an obvious one when you think about it, but I mean, this is a new toy that really isn't usually available to this kind of a build. And what this does, it doesn't just have the combust skill. I know most people think of this, they're like, isn't that the one that's kind of like Infernal Blow for anyone who uses the Warcry? Yes, but also no. This covers enemies in Ash, which we don't really have a way to do that yet. But with this, 20 power, aka just like with the one unique enemy nearby, is another 12% increased fire damage taken, which on top of shock, which is 15% baseline from our corpse ascendancy, that's 27% now. That's a pretty big increase. It's not like tremendous, but I want to say it's in the realm of 8 to 9% that you wouldn't otherwise have, and that's pretty good. That's pretty good if you can fit the gems to make it happen. Specify that, because let me be clear, you can't do everything I've talked about here. That's the thing. The build is kind of at a branch point when you get here, where surprisingly there are a lot of things you can do, and what is affordable from day to day is going to pivot based on what's available in the market and also what stage of the league we're at. It is a lot of opportunities that will make the build better, oftentimes with clear forks in the road on what you're going to do, such as with the amulet situation, exactly what mods you want to roll on your body armor, what kind of Watcher's Eye you go for, etc. You might even be like, what if I want an All's Uprising to make my determination free, and then I actually reserve some mana to put Tempest Shield on the build to cover spell blocks so I can run an Aegis Aurora. That is also an option that would potentially work and be very strong. That would probably make you the most immortal, like in a mapping situation, actually. That's a great shield. I bricked one today with a double corrupt just because someone said Valor No Balls after my first one ever dropped for me. That was a lot of fun. I didn't want to use the shield, so it didn't bother me too much, although that is probably 1.5 divs I can't get back. Whoops. All that said, this is the end game. This is where we're at. The build is kind of, at this point, being pushed to its limit, where we're really digging to see what we can get out of it. You might have to go to weird places from here to make it stronger. I know I'm going to be doing that, at least as soon as I get my Watcher's Eye thing sorted. That's a... We're in the multi-div investment stage, you know? That's kind of a big part of this. Regardless, this is your smattering of Corpseblaster improvements that you can use to make your Corpseblaster play the way you want. And I hope you have a good one, Exiles. The new patch just came out. The League mechanic should be good now, knock on wood. Probably see you again in a few days with the next discovery, because, man, they are rolling in, and that's pretty great.